Good evening, everyone. I have 6:32 and a quorum of commissioners, so I will open up tonight's Mashpee Conservation Commission agenda. This is for Thursday, February 6, 2025. We are meeting in the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. Our meeting tonight is broadcast live on local cable channels 8 and 1072, and also streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website. Before we do begin, if you would join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Just take a moment of silence. Thank you. Our first agenda tonight is executive session. Hold on one second. And this is to go into executive session in regards to 425 Monomoskoye Road, DEP file number 433269. So I would accept a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law 30A, Section 21A3, to review the current status and recommendations with Town Council regarding litigation relative to a denial for a project located at 425 Monomoskoye Road.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Any discussion? Okay, I will take a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that's unanimous. So we are in executive session. Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to reconvene in open session. This is the Mashpee Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, February 6th, 2025. We're meeting in the Wacoya Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. Tonight we are broadcast live on local channel 8 and 1072. We are also streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website. Before we do begin tonight's meeting, if you would like to join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag, please do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we begin, I'll take a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. First on our agenda tonight is for public comment. If there is anyone present, either here at the meeting or online, that have any issues that are not related to agenda items that we have listed for tonight's meeting, this would be the time to address the commission. So are there any questions or comments from anyone? Doesn't look like anybody in the room wants to talk to us right now. Dan, do we have anybody online that?
I'm not seeing that.
I saw a couple of names, but they might be for hearings down the line, I guess. Okay, so I guess we're okay with that. All right, I'm going to pass over the pre and post hearing agenda items and go right to the hearings themselves for tonight. Our first hearing is 42 Sandy Way, Charles E. and Michelle C. Torget. This is a proposed septic system upgrade. Representative is GeoCape Environmental Consultants. This hearing is being continued from December 12th, January 9th, and January 23rd, and it's a request for determination of applicability. We have had a subsequent request to continue this again to February 20th. The consultant is still working on that alternative septic design for the project. They just either haven't been able to get it the way they want it, or they're still working on it. So that's what they're asking for, to go to February 20th. I do believe that when we get to the 20th, we would certainly be over our 3 limit. And I think at that point, we might be looking at a full NOI for this project, but let's give it one more shot and see what you think. So if there's a motion for that continuance?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Motion made and seconded for the continuance to February 20th. Any questions, concerns from commissioners? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that's unanimous, and we'll continue that to the 20th. Our next hearing is for 96 Pompanesett Island Road. Ed Shapiro, proposed septic system upgrade. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. The owner of record is Donald R. Shapiro. This is an RDA. And we also have a continuance requested to March 6th. Apparently, the Board of Health has not been, the application has not been made to the Board of Health for this septic system design and upgrade. So they want to hold off until the 6th. So if there's a motion for that continuance?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Motion made and seconded. Any questions from commissioners? Comments? Discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that is also unanimous, and that's to March 6th. Our next hearing is for 134 Shore Drive West, Joshua and Christina Eisner, trustees, Stool and Stars Revocable Trust. This is a request to amend the order of conditions, DEP file number 043-3209, for a proposed revision to hardscaping and landscaping. The representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. And I guess we're all set. Good evening, sir. Can I have your name for the record, please?
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant. And also joining us is Sean Papish, who is the landscape design architect on the Zoom platform. So this project is an amendment to an order of condition. The original order of condition dates back to 2022. There was a first amendment in 2023. The property transferred ownership in October of last year, and the current owner is looking to have a different type of pool improvement. So this project is to revisit and redesign the new pool that is different from what the prior owner had requested for and got permission for. Overall, in terms of proposed pool, proposed deck, proposed patio, we have a roughly 57 square foot of reduction of square foot development in the buffer zone compared to the last approval. The project still proposes to remove ornamental plantings on the inside of the pool fence and replace them with native plantings. There is roughly 2,000 square feet of lawn to be retained within the property. That is still around 9.1% of the land of the property that is in jurisdiction. The property or the project still proposes to do an improvement to the septic system in the form of nitrogen reducing technology. So that's no different from what we had proposed before. Outside of conservation jurisdiction, the last project proposed some additions to the front of the house. This homeowner currently doesn't have proposed additions to the front of the house. So all this work is proposed to the redevelopment of the pool and the pool area. The setbacks are all contained within the existing fencing of the pool. The closest portion of this project is one of the landscape walls that is 58 feet from the top of the bank, but still inside the existing fencing and development. That's essentially the project that we have for this amendment. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. I'll go first to commissioners for questions or comments that you might have on this project as it's presented.
I had a question regarding
See,
there was a mention of having a mat leading to the pathway to the stairs leading down to the beach.
Right. Last amendment, actually, it might have been the original order of conditions. We got the stairs to access the beach. And at the time, there was a path proposed, and there was some issues with that path because there was a temporary path and so forth. This project right now, instead of just walking on the ground, what they're proposing to do is one of those rollable board mats to get to the stairs and then roll it back out in the off season.
Okay, and this is going to be cedar? Did it?
I don't have the specific. If Sean, you're listening to the hearing and you have already in mind what material is going to be used for this rollout.
Typically, we would use a cedar. There's some other materials you can use, but cedar is the most common.
And will this be staked down into the ground to
There
keep?
will be some stakes you have at an intermittent stage, but essentially the weight is what holds it down. There'll be a few stakes along the edges, but you just roll it back up at the end of the season. It's a real efficient way to do a pathway like that. Right across the sand. That area has already been planted by the previous owner of the beach grass.
Was that from the original order of conditions that it was planted? Was that from the original order?
So,
that-
right, the original order condition included much more work than what we're amending here.
Right.
It started with the coastal bank stabilization for the erosion portion.
Mhm.
Then there was invasive removal. If those two went to the site a couple of years ago, the entire waterfront side was infested with Japanese knotweed.
Right.
And one of the requirements was to eradicate the Japanese knotweed and plant native species. I believe the Japanese knotweed is under control to the majority of the extent, because there is knotweed on the adjacent properties, and there's beach grass taking over the area.
And what is the width of the mat?
It's 4 feet, if I'm not mistaken.
4? Okay. All right, I just wanted to follow up
We
with
showed
you.
it 30, we would do it 36 inch,
Okay.
so it'd be 3 feet.
3 feet.
3 feet, yes.
And I was not on the site since this request came in. What is the existing space where there is no vegetation? Is it at 4 now?
With-
I would say it's probably, it's really more of just a sandy base that you've got for the beach grass now, sir, and it's just been left open. It's probably in that neighborhood of 3 or 4 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood.
So would this require a little bit more plantings to bring it up to the planned 3-foot gap?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. I think we'll probably get some pretty good spreading out of the beach grass. I think when we witnessed the beach grass, it was not long after planted, frankly. I think the previous owner did this probably relatively recently into last season. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'll get some pretty good coverage pretty quickly.
Okay. Other questions from commissioners? I'll go out to Marjorie or Sarah.
I had a couple of questions.
Okay, Sarah?
Audrey, would you like to go first? Okay, great. Thank you, good evening, Sean, good evening, Ro. Nice to see you. Let me just pull up my notes, I've got a million windows open. So I think one of the questions that I had has to do with just the overall disturbance of the bank. Of course, that's like the primary concern when we're looking at any kind of activity within kind of the no-touch zone. And I know that now we have a larger buffer and no-touch zone to the coastal bank, but I do understand that the recommendation is that the buffers that are in the original order of conditions from 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, are grandfathered in, but the impact and the cumulative impact is still a concern of mine. So my question is just, what is there any increase in development area that's outside the already permitted areas in the plan? I know the notes that we have say that the pool and patio, and I believe the septic system have some changes, but those are all within like previously approved disturbance areas, if that makes sense?
So right now, the property has a pool fence that contains a lot of the development already within the pool fence. So all these proposed amendment or changes are happening inside the pool fence. And like we had done and got approvals before, inside the pool fence there's a lot of privet hedges and a lot of ornamental shrubbery. At the last approved order, all of those natives and non-native, all of those ornamentals and non-native shrubbery were going to be replaced with native shrubs, and that is still the case for this project. So we're essentially working within the confines of the full fenced area, like we had done and got approvals before. Outside of the fenced area, between the fence and the top of the coastal bank, that restoration and eradication of invasives, that already took place. Now it's a matter of just monitoring the progress of the growth and keeping in check that the invasives out there do not grow back. On the bank itself, all the work that was approved on the bank, which was the stabilization of the portion that eroded and the installation of the beach access stairs, that's being done. So no, this amendment does not propose anything within the outside area of the fence towards the top of the bank or on the top, on the coastal bank.
Okay, that's wonderful. And then how far are we into the monitoring maintenance of that work for the invasives?
The original order dates back now almost 2.5 years, 3 years. I think, of course, the eradication took at least one shot at, and it's been planted. So I think and I don't have it in front of me, but there was a land management plan submitted to the commission for that project. And I think it was like twice a year, they were gonna look at the site to see how the controlling of the invasives is either working or more treatment is needed, and how the new plantings are doing. But I don't have the specifics of when is the next time that they're gonna do it. It is likely that it's in the spring, because those are usually the 2 times, is spring and fall, when they go back and check.
Okay, and we might want to consider, if we want to extend the monitoring maintenance, given the amendments. Are there any increases to impervious surfaces within the project area? It was unclear to me, it looks like there's some paved areas in the front. Are we kind of net zero with approved impervious surface installs?
So, right, there is a reduction from what was last approved of approximately 57 square feet.
Great, we'll take what we can get. One other question that I had was about the pool drainage. So, and forgive me, I'm not a pool person, but on the plan it says that there's a spill basin, and I just want to ensure, of course, that we're not overflowing the pool onto the bank or out into the ocean. Of course, this is going to get pumped out when it gets cleaned out. Is that correct?
So this is an infinity edge pool. So what those pools have is there's like a little cascade on one side, in this case, 2 sides of the pool. And that infinity edge, the water spills over into what is called a basin, so a lower basin. And that water recirculates within the pool. For the purpose, the first question you had about the maintenance of the pool, we propose a pool drywall. There is a drywall proposed on the project for any maintenance that needs to be done. But typically these pools stay full. They probably drop a few inches for the winter time, but they don't completely dry them out for the off season.
Okay. I would just also be concerned about, rainfall, if it's going to be covered again. I'm not a pool person. I don't know how this works, but water is pretty important in where it goes. So I would defer to the commission and the folks that have been here longer. But I would be a lot more comfortable if, rather than a dry well, we had a condition in here that said that any maintenance would pump the water off-site instead of sending it down into the bank, just in terms of stabilization. It's a lot of water going in at once.
Right. I'm sure nobody's going to remember this, but at the first or second hearing a few years ago, we described how this property is actually shaped. The actual top of the bank right now is the highest point on the property. The land slopes to the west, towards the road, away from the top of the bank. And the reasoning that the top of the bank right now is there is because over so many years, the bank has been eroding, and it's reached this point. And that land, although it's fairly flat, in general, it slopes away from the top of the bank and towards the road.
So that water, you're saying, would go to the foundation instead of?
Not to the foundation. The southwest side is where the road kind of goes. There's a driveway that the golf club uses, and that's where it goes. Right, so it flows over the septic system and towards the road, and eventually towards the golf course on the other side.
Okay. Okay, and we're also bordered by, pretty critical Wacoit Bay habitat. So that's great. I think those were the only questions that I had for the representatives, but I did have a question for the fellow commissioners, just a clarification, and please educate me here. So the lawn calculations, are these per lot, or is it just per the portion of the lot that is within the jurisdictional areas that has to be at 10% or less? I'm a little confused about that. And the language on this particular plan says that the lawn area is is it 9.4% within the jurisdictional areas? But I'm unclear as to whether or not that's within the entire lot and if we exceed 10% on the entire lot. So I just wanted to get some clarification from our staff and other commissioners what the rule is there.
Yeah, so Sarah, the rule is it's all areas of lot that are within wetlands jurisdiction. Not
Okay.
the entire lot. I believe most of the lot, of this lot is most likely within wetlands jurisdiction anyway.
Okay,
It is relegated to that, yeah,
got it. Okay, thank you.
sure.
And-
That's all I've got.
Okay, and Drew, while you're still there, do we not have a boilerplate language on the order of conditions for drawdown on swimming pools?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the original order to see if that was the case when it was first approved and issued, but we can certainly add a condition that the pool water needs to be pumped out as opposed to, drained any other way.
Yeah,
So, it's easy enough to add in that condition through an amendment if this is approved.
yeah, we stopped that. I don't know if it goes back that far, but I know for the last couple of years, we haven't allowed any pools to be pumped into dry wells.
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
so that's not a problem to,
Sure.
I'm assuming the applicant will be fine with that condition?
Yeah,
We'd be fine, it's an existing pool there now. Yeah, exactly, yeah, so
Okay.
we can certainly add that in, I would just say make it part of the motion.
sure, okay. Other questions?
I do have one, Raul. Has New Seabury Golf Course given permission for work in the easement on the project?
So there's no work actually on the easement. The
Well, it looks like the septic's, the SAS.
I stand corrected. You're correct. The septic system upgrade is in the easement. The existing septic is already in the easement, and the existing fence is already in the easement. So those areas are allowed for the driveway easement for the golf course, but these proposed improvements are subsurface that would not impede the driveway use that exists. We don't anticipate the driveway moving from where the current location is. So we believe all these improvements are good with that easement.
Okay, so the SAS is going in the easement, there's a new fence going in the easement.
There's a
You guys
portion,
have written permission from New Seabury to do this.
they'll coordinate with New Seabury, the whoever is holding that easement or has the rights over that easement. I believe it is for that driveway, but we'll confirm. If you can't go in there, they'll just have to cut it wherever he stops.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause that's an issue with New Seabury to deal with. Okay. I think that's all I have for
Okay.
questions.
Marjorie, did you have questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Raul, my question goes over to the nitrogen calculations on the septic system. And I don't have those in front of me right now, but I did look at them today. On the actual loading for the proposed system, which is much less than the design load, I came up with 18.99 parts per million of nitrogen that's actually coming out of the effluent of the figure isn't on the calculations, it just gives the amount of water going in, the amount of nitrogen and the amount of water. I believe it might have been 19,000 and something, and then, let's see if I can find them.
For the existing condition, there is...
No, for the proposed. Septic application.
19,777.
Yeah. And then what was the flow of water?
1,041 liters.
Right. So I came up with 18.99, just for the nitrogen there. I know you take it all the way down through and you look at everything, you know,
Right.
everything's coming off, and it's all calculated out at the end to come out to what you had there, it was 5 point something. But is that true? Is that what we're looking at coming out of the tank itself? I'm trying to get a handle on all the various systems and what comes out of just the system, not the whole calculation.
So, right, if we just compare the wastewater,
Yeah.
nitrogen load, that gets to the ground, the existing one is 36,000 milligrams, because the
Yeah.
existing one does not have nitrogen reducing.
Right.
With the nitrogen reducing, it goes down to 19,707. So it's some roughly 45% reduction from existing condition.
I
If we
came up
only
with-
look at just the sewer nitrogen levels and only look at the actual calculations of nitrogen, assuming that there is 2 people for every bedroom, which in reality, that would not be the case.
Right. Other engineers have told me 2.5 people per bedroom, but
Right, based on census.
based on the figures that you've submitted with this project, I came up with 18.99. Is that, I mean, you can run it through your calculator if you'd like, but,
Right, the nitrogen calculation is for the entire site, so we don't,
exactly.
we didn't
I'm just
calculate
looking
that
at
one
the
in
tank
specific.
itself. Right. I'm keeping track of all the different systems that get proposed and what's coming out of each system.
So, right, that calculates to 18.99.
18.99, so I'm correct in that. Okay. I just wanted to confirm that. And I understand this whole sheet that we're using came from the Cape Cod Commission, and other factors come into the total load for the entire lot. But on projects where we have very little clearance to groundwater, I'm really not on board with the fact that these other areas and the amount of water that's being run into these calculations actually mitigates the nitrogen that's coming out of the effluent of that disposal system. For example, you're at 18.99. That, if you had a lot where the groundwater is fairly close to the surface, and you're at 18.99 over here that's going right in, how does something over here mitigate that 18.99? It's impossible.
So, right, it's an aggregate. It's
Right.
taking into account the entire property
Right.
and which ways the project is improving on nitrogen loading overall, not in one specific location. So one of the ways is reducing lawn. Another way is doing a D-night septic system component. So those are the means we have to kind of improve on nitrogen, which the project is doing by both reducing some lawn and by introducing a nitrogen reducing component to the septic system.
Sure. Okay. I just wanted to verify my figures, because I'm keeping a little spreadsheet of all these different systems. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, then I'll go to our agents. If there's any questions or comments that you'd like to make, either Dan or Drew?
No other comments. I don't know if there was a question on the buffer zone, that it is grandfathered in as 100 feet. There's been other examples of that we got legal clarification on, so just to reiterate that it is going by the previously existing buffer zone, because it's effectively grandfathered in from when the orders were originally issued.
Yep.
And yeah, no other comments.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing from me.
Okay. Comments from the public, if there are any, either here in the room or online?
Nothing online.
Okay. And I guess we're good with our discussions. I would accept the motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve the amended order conditions for 134 Shore Drive West with the following conditions: that the pool water be pumped out in truck off-site, not into a dry well, and that all lawn to meet our Conservation Commission lawn requirements.
Okay. Is there,
Commissioner Cook, I wonder if we could add a condition about extending the monitoring and maintenance for the brush management on the top of the bank, and then adding a 3-year monitoring and maintenance for the new native plantings as a
Yep.
condition?
Yeah, I agree with that. That sounds good, Sarah.
Great.
Yeah, we can add that in as a
Okay.
condition for a 3-year monitoring of all plantings.
Mhm. So extend the warranty. What about the easement?
Just, yeah, the easement that the applicant has to, before the order conditions be granted, that New Seabury has approved work in the easement.
Okay,
Because if they don't approve it, then the septic system has to go elsewhere and the fence has to go elsewhere.
right, right.
If they move the septic system though, if New Seabury didn't approve the easement, they'd have to come back before us, wouldn't they? Would they? So, do we,
Yeah, with
do we
the-
care whether New?
With the revised plan,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
but, just want to know, if that's a problem sooner than later,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Okay, so we have the conditions are the launch standards, extending the monitoring contract, the written authority on the easement, and the drawdown for the swimming pool with the pump truck.
Yep.
That was it. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Motion made and seconded. Any other deliberations before I call for a vote? We're good online up there with Sarah and Marjorie? We're good?
We're good.
Okay, then I'll take a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Marjorie?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that motion carries unanimously. Thank you,
Thank you.
Raul. 18.99. Keeping track of all,
Gotta hold you to that.
keeping track of all those.
That's right.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to our next hearing. This is for 362 Monomoskoye Road, Todd A. West. This is a proposed removal of an existing dock, construction and maintenance of a new dock, ramp, and float. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. This is a notice of intent, DEP file number 433327, and tonight's hearing is continued from our last meeting, January 23rd. Good evening. Can I have your name for the record?
Good evening. Chuck Rowland, Cape and Islands Engineering. I'm a professional engineer. Tonight, I'm presenting in front of you a proposed pier for the applicant, the owner of 362 Monomoskoye Road. So I've proposed a pier in the middle of the lot, which centers the pier. We're proposing to remove the existing pier from a barge using a vibratory hammer, and there'll be no cutting over the salt marsh. The proposed pier will be put in with piles using a vibratory hammer. The proposed pier is a improvement over the existing pier, we feel, because we have provided greater separation, providing things like through-flow grading, as well as the end of the pier has greater separation to the substrate than the existing float. We feel that we meet at least the majority of the performance standards in section 4A 1 through 13. We've sent this to the harbor master and the shellfish constable, and they have both voiced no objections. I know that we did get a letter from DMF discussing the separation to salt marsh. I don't see why we can't provide more separation for the salt marsh in that area. We have 4 feet at mean high 5 feet at mean high water and 4 feet closer to the top, but I don't see why we couldn't put a couple extra stairs in to provide 6-foot separation so that we can provide the 1.5 to 1. In one, the note down here on the bottom, I'll be providing the grading over the salt marsh. During the design process, we showed a larger bent pile spacing, so that way there's only one set of piles that's in the salt marsh proposed, and there's one set of piles in the salt marsh that's being proposed to be removed. So we did try to increase that bent spacing just to prevent having another set of piles proposed in the salt marsh. So we have tried to propose the least amount of impacts to the site as possible. So with that, I'm happy to take commissioners' comments.
Okay, thank you. So, any questions or comments on,
Dan, do you have a copy of the DMF letter? I looked at it when it was sent out, but I'm trying to remember exactly. I know they mentioned about trying to repair the existing pier.
Yeah, they did. They didn't like my wording for reconstruction. It is a new pier that we're proposing in the center of the lot. And the other, to note, the reason why we are proposing to put it in the center of the lot versus along the sidelines is the state Chapter 91 does prefer to have 25 feet from the abutting lot line when we project that out. So we've proposed this to meet that standard.
Chuck, on that mooring that was out there,
Yep.
was that the client's mooring, or is that, whose mooring is that?
I'm not sure whose mooring it is. I did see it when I was out there. You know, it is 50 feet away. I don't really picture there being massive boats swinging into it, but all I know is that the harbor master did not have an issue with it, but I'm not sure who owns the mooring.
And what size piles you proposing?
I believe that we did call for, typically we call for 10 to 12 inch piles.
I don't think it says, though, does it?
And then, so you said they can use a vibratory hammer to remove the existing pilings?
Yeah, you can, you know, essentially you clamp a vibratory hammer on there and you shake it loose. That's if it's stuck, and if it's not stuck, you can just yank it out with a barge.
Okay. Is there a plan to revegetate the salt marsh with those pilings there?
We can definitely do that. We would be more than happy to plant Spartina where the existing structure is,
Okay. Yeah, that'd be.
if that would,
be
wants to
helpful,
be conditioned.
So they don't agree with the net zero impact within the salt marsh?
I think that the applicant's statement on page 4, but I think that I can meet that if I go to the 1.5 to 1, if I lift it up over the salt marsh to 6 feet.
With the flow through on that part of it, okay.
Do you want to see the letter?
Hmm?
You want to see the letter from DMF?
Yeah, it's right up there.
Oh, he's got it there, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so no grounded floats also too, right? Come on,
So,
yeah. With the float stops. Okay, good, I'm all set.
so Chuck, I have a question. When I look at the existing ramp and float, the deepest water sounding looks like 1.6 off the float?
Yeah.
Okay, so the deepest water sounding for the proposed new float is 2.2?
Yep.
And if you extended the old float, per the recommendations of DMF, because they say that the repair of the structure should be within the same footprint as the existing structure. If you extended that out, the same distance, you'd be in the same depth of water, 2.2. So is the reason moving this to the center because of a 25-foot setback issue?
Yes.
And whose jurisdiction is that? Zoning?
That's, it's called Chapter 91, DEP, Chapter 91.
So how did it get licensed in the first place?
For a long time, it was not it was not enforced. It was not, I don't think it was a regulation for a long, long time.
All right. I was just looking at the soundings and thinking, why not just move it out? I wasn't aware of the 25-foot.
It's a very valid statement, and I kind of wrestled with it myself, but
Yeah,
I know that for regulatory, like the next phase in that, they prefer to see it at least 25 feet off of the property line.
yeah. And one last question. These two dolphin piers, what are those for?
Another description of them is tie-off piles. So it's for when you're coming in, navigation-wise, when you can come in, because the current kind of tears through there, you can come in and you can either bump off of the dolphin piles, fend off of that, as opposed to getting swept down the river, especially if you have southerly wind and you have
Sure.
northerly current. It'll push you off the float if you're trying to dock on the north side.
Okay. Okay, I don't have,
I know all about that.
it's kind of like bumper pool or something on a,
Yeah.
yeah. Other questions from commissioners? Sarah or Marjorie?
I'm good.
All set?
I have a couple. I have a couple. Hey, Chuck.
Hello.
Good evening. My apologies if I already missed this. I don't remember seeing it in the packet, but is the float fixed, or where are you planning to store that? Where are the applicants planning to store
To store the float in the wintertime?
that? Yeah.
It'll be trucked, it'll be taken away off-site.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
And I would like to see the DMF letter, but I'm not there in person, but I do understand that, again, the recommendation is to maintain or restore the existing dock, but I just want to confirm my understanding, Chuck, that in order to get the amended Chapter 91 license, they're not going to permit you to do that?
part of the Chapter 91 application is that they want to see it 25 feet off of the property line, so, to extend it like,
Dock.
say it again for the new, yeah.
For a new dock, right, but if you're maintaining an existing dock that's already licensed,
So it wouldn't be, it would be considered a new license and a new structure with the improvements that we're making.
okay. Okay, so just so I understand, there's absolutely no way to remediate the existing dock and work with this?
I don't ever like to say never and you can't, just because there's always, if there's a will, there's always a way. For a regulatory purpose, this is definitely the easiest way, and we really think that it's an improvement over the existing conditions. We'll be able to, with the mitigation that we'll be able to provide, both replanting the existing salt marsh that may have been disturbed, adding the separation, and providing the grading over the existing salt marsh.
And these are all improvements that we've just discussed this evening, so they're not reflected in the plan we have, is that correct?
No, the only thing that I have not included on the plan is the separation. So on the profile, I have a 4-foot separation, and we're going to be showing a 6-foot separation. But I have shown light penetrating grading over the salt marsh, so that we've always proposed that.
Okay, great, and so is that, so through flow decking is what we're proposing for the entire structure?
Yes, I'll be proposing through flow for the entire structure, not just over the salt marsh.
Wonderful. And just one other question,
Yep.
and again, I'm not a dock, I feel like I'm saying that a lot tonight. I'm not a dock specialist, I'm not a specialist here. But the plan didn't say there was a net zero impact, and I'm wondering if you can explain this to me, because the existing structure from the plan has 6 piles. And the proposed one, including the little dolphin tie-off piles we just discussed, brings the total up to 20 piles. So in terms of net zero impact in the salt marsh and the land under ocean, can you explain to me how that's achieved when we're more than tripling the disturbance in the substrate there?
So I believe that on my calculations here, I have, the salt marsh is net zero. I have 2 piles in the salt marsh and proposed is 2. And then the impact under land under ocean, I have existing 1.1 and I'm proposing 5.4. So, no, it will be a small increase in footprint over the land, in the land under the ocean.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. And so I understand that even though there's not a shellfish mitigation fee to be assessed, that the applicant would prefer that over any upland mitigation for that impact?
Yes, so I discussed that with Drew, and I think that we would rather go with the fee as opposed to the planting. We both kind of agreed that it's sometimes a little difficult for the commission and the agents to enforce the planting, especially if properties get transferred, if things get cut or removed, where the fee is a little bit more set in stone, and we know that it's going to a good place, and you don't have to police it as much.
Understood, but there is no fee, right? Because the shellfish constable is not assessing a shellfish mitigation fee, so there is no fee. And forgive me for being candid here, but throwing money at an ecological impact doesn't mitigate it. So we might want to do something that's actually going to have a tangible impact on the resource areas that are being affected, rather than just collect money, because it's just a commissioner's opinion.
Okay.
So
Are we, I think there's an area, we'd be happy to mitigate the areas that are above the salt marsh where it's currently a pier. We can remove those rocks and plant that area, and then we'd be happy to plant the portion of the path that's just west of the existing ramp. So that would be about 60 square feet of mitigation planting.
So I'm getting a little lost. Are we talking about shellfish or vegetation?
Vegetation.
But hold that thought. Let's let Sarah and Chuck work this out, and then we'll come back to that.
If that would appease you.
yeah, I think it's a great start. I'd like to take a look at the numbers and hear from my fellow commissioners as to, the impact that the agent's opinion, but I would much prefer upland mitigation in some way that's going to benefit the salt marsh, especially considering the disturbance, even though it is pretty close to net zero, since we're unable to mitigate the land under ocean, and the shellfish mitigation fee is not really it's not a compensatory measure that's available for this particular application, from what it sounds like. And I think that's all I've got, Paul, so I'll hand it back to you.
Okay. So, Shauna, going back to this issue, when there's no mitigation that can be offered for the disturbance to land under the ocean, and in this case there isn't because of the active boating season, that area just isn't used for harvesting shellfish. There is mitigation that can be offered in the upland in lieu of
Okay, I got
not being
it.
able to get
Okay.
the shellfish met. Typically, there's a fee that's calculated for each pile that goes in. They add them all up, and the going rate of the quahogs or the oysters at that time determine the fee that's assessed that gets paid into the general fund. But in this case, there is no fee, and so the commission's entitled to ask for mitigation upland. Okay?
On the, on the,
On the land, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what he's calculating out, the old pathway, and, did you say removing some rocks?
It looks like there's some rocks, and we've got it shown on the plan just south of the existing ramp. Those right there.
So Chuck, let me ask, if this whole dock and ramp and pier is gonna be removed, that hardscape walkway with the cobble edgings isn't gonna be required anymore.
Correct, so we're offering to plant that area that, yes.
So you're saying that we can remove this whole section from the new pier over to the old pier, and then this whole area right in here, basically? This whole area right in, all this area right there?
Sure. I think we're being amenable to that.
Getting better.
Yeah, well, it's a walk to nowhere, actually, you might as well take
Yeah.
advantage of it.
Yeah, so that should offer, you know, we can revegetate the upland there.
Okay,
Gets rid of hardscape.
yep.
So Sarah, does that make you happy?
Good start. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good start, yeah. Thank you.
Other questions from commissioners? Neil, anything? No? Sean, anything else?
No, I'm sorry, I eventually will
Okay.
learn all of this.
So let me go to the agents for questions or comments.
Yeah, so I did kind of prefer the shellfish mitigation, even though the shellfish constable didn't, require it or make a recommendation of it. Only because, just to clarify, that money it does go into the general fund, but it also gets reallocated to the shellfish department, for their shellfish propagation program. So it is a form of mitigation, a very viable form of mitigation, but just not directly on site. But obviously, it's your discretion as far as what you feel is a more appropriate form of mitigation, whether it's upland or the fee. But the shellfish constable did calculate out a fee if you were to defer to that. And I have that information, so it's roughly $2,768. Also, just to point out that there are other recommendations from Division of Marine Fisheries, such as a time of year restriction for dock construction, so it doesn't interfere with winter flounder spawning period, which is January 1st to May 31st. So if there's an approval, I would make that part of the condition, as well as the true flow decking.
Okay. Dan, anything you would?
Yeah, one thing, when I first looked at the plan, I looked at those two rocks, and I literally thought it was a revetment wall. And my concern was when I went on site, it's clearly not. And that, to me, looks almost like it looks like a possible footprint for a revetment wall. It's not allowed. So I would just recommend taking those rocks off and not having them mitigated for, but having that section itself include mitigation that's, compensatory or whatnot for the whole project. That's all. Those rocks they shouldn't have been there at all, honestly. So, no, I know it's not for the homeowner. But when it comes to it, Steve, as he said, with the hardscape reduction, you're gonna have an option to mitigate there. That's gonna be salt marsh plugs or whatever it may be for that. So there is on-site mitigation that can occur, so I think that's good for this project. If the dock, as you said, it might not be a possibility with Chapter 91. If it could stay in the same footprint, I think that would be best for the whole thing, but if Chapter 91 is mandating it, then it's kind of a sticky situation, so yeah. But that's it for me.
Okay. Questions from the public or comments? Okay. Before I ask for a motion, as a follow-up, on Chapter 31, or Chapter 91 license, that's a 30-year license?
I believe there are 30-year licenses now,
And
yes.
how long has this existing ramp and float been in place?
I'm not 100% sure.
So if we're rebuilding the existing one, which is what the DMF really is asking for, how would that not be licensed? I mean, the license is there.
So they would request that the float be moved either 25 feet, or we would have to get some sort of an agreement from the neighbor to be that much closer.
But the neighbor's float is quite a distance away.
Yeah, it's not so much the float, it's the property line, the riparian line.
Paul, one thing, I understand what DMF said, but if I have a whole set of conditions on it, which I think might improve
Right.
everything,
Yep.
you know, versus keeping what's there, in between, you know, removing the rocks, 6-foot separation, revegetating the salt marsh, removing all that hardscape and mitigation, putting in float stops,
Yep.
you know, the throw flow, composite decking, and then, you know, the construction activity time of year to protect the winter flounder. I think that's it, a lot more than, you know, extending the existing
Right.
pier. You know, I, understand both sides of the issue, but I think, you know, we got a lot of things that we're gonna gain from it.
Yeah, I was looking for a feasible way to avoid new intrusion into a salt marsh where there isn't, plus all of the disturbance to land under ocean from all the extra piles,
Right.
only to achieve that 2.2 depth of water, which you can achieve with the existing ramp if you just move it straight out,
Right,
the same distance. So and you would still have the true flow decking, because we would require that. They wouldn't be able to do the work because you can't between January and, so it's the same thing, other than we're avoiding all that extra disturbance to land under ocean. So it's a toss-up.
What's the height of the current dock?
It
Above
wouldn't
the
matter,
marsh.
because they're gonna reconstruct it, so it would have to go to 151. I don't know what it is, to be honest. You know,
It's very low. I mean, you can see in the photos.
It's pretty much ground level from where you're walking on.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's
you-
also those 2 dolphin piles, Paul,
yeah,
that, you know, if you kept it in the same location, those dolphin piles would be closer to the adjacent dock as well. So just to throw that out there,
yeah.
another consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I tend to agree with you. I wonder if there's a way to activate some sort of peer review with regards to the Chapter 91 restrictions, just to find out if there would be some workaround that would allow the applicant's needs to get met while really trying to work with the existing structure as it is per the recommendations from DMF.
I don't know. I don't know
But-
how,
Would you be pulling those, you'd have to pull those pilings
No
in
matter
the
what.
existing dock to get it up to height with new pilings?
Yeah, no matter what.
yeah.
But before we go do
I
a peer.
tend to agree with Steve on this, that I think the mitigation of the new dock is going to net a better result,
Yeah,
is my opinion on it.
okay. Anything else? Then I would accept the motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, make a motion for, this is for 362 Monomoskoye Road, Todd A. West, for a closing issue, to build a new pier with the following conditions. Number 1, that the rocks next to the old pier be removed. Number 2, be 6-foot separation. Number 3, revegetate the salt marsh after the existing pier is removed. Number 4, have float stops on the float. Number 5 is the flow-through composite decking on the whole pier. The next one would be to restrict construction activities from January 1st to May 31st to protect the winter flounder. And then remove the hardscape and the walkways that no longer be used, and mitigate with plantings and coordinate with staff. And that the plans be revised to show all these changes.
And
I
the
don't know if
float
this,
stops at what height?
as recommended by DMF?
That's 2.5. But I believe regulation 27 is less. Drew, is regulation 27, the float stop's less than 2.5?
I think it's 18 inches.
So 1.5.
I don't,
Yes.
and I don't know if there's anything else in DMF that you guys want to include as a condition?
I think you covered all the recommendations they made.
I think you are,
Okay.
other than staying in the same footprint.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, like the barge restricted 2 hours before and after high tide, that's a standard.
Yeah,
Right.
we
Fuel.
can reference the DMF letter in the order of conditions.
Okay.
And we can even just, just incorporate those conditions into the order, just by, adding that language.
Okay, we'll add that as a condition also too.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Sandy. So the motion is made and seconded. Any further discussion by commissioners? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Marjorie? And I'll vote yes as well, although I'd like to see the original one, but
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's always a hustle. Go on.
yeah. It's good to get rid of that hardscape.
Full dock was
Yeah.
appropriately.
Okay, our next hearing is for 231 Vineyard Reach Condominium Association. This is a proposed invasive species removal and management and construction of a retaining wall for erosion prevention. Representative is Wet Tech Land Design. It's a notice of intent, DEP file number 433328, and this hearing is continued from January 9th and January 23rd.
Good
sir.
evening, yeah, thank you for hearing this again, and thanks for mentioning the number, 43328. So, I don't know why that was late in coming. I'll mention something right up front, too. We've been working at an agreement with New Seabury Properties LLC, as you requested. They just signed it today. So I've emailed it to Dan Kent and to Drew and Stacy. But there were some other technical things here that we wanted to talk about. So I sent a sheet over talking about those elements. Like we said, we're going to put an excavator on the bottom of the slope. It'll walk along the slope, and it'll remove the willows, turn it around, and feed it to another piece of equipment and cart it off the site. I think it's better if we cut the products off the site and not leave all the chips there. A big issue, too, was the top and bottom of the slope to do limited work, sedimentation control. So we've done that at both the top of the slope and the bottom of the slope. And we showed you a new drawing, which is a cross-section. You had it up a second ago. This drawing here, there we go. Thank you. So it shows the whole thing. I'm glad that you actually asked me to do that because it showed quite a bit. The slope is 37%. We talked about 3-to-1 pitch the last time. It was pretty close. And that's the steepest portion where we did the cut. On the plan, you can see the detail lines. So it's the steepest portion right there. You can see where the willows are. We'll pluck the willows out. We're going to do some site clearing first in order to get the machinery to go in there. That's the area to be replanted, so when we work our way out, that's where the plants will go. There is no wholesale earthwork here. We're hoping that this machine can reach from the bottom and reach to the top to remove the root systems of the invasive species that are there as well, in which case it'd be a tidy little project. We're leaving the middle of the slope as best we can, but just in case we we harm the slope or disturb it, we're going to put in erosion control blankets, staples, and of course the plant material that is the mitigation of this project. One of the big things that came up was the pond construction. New Seabury has changed hands a number of times since that project was done. They didn't have plans. So I have some people that were in place at the time, and I've got a sort of a verbal record of what was happening. One of the people that visited the site at the time, they said it was kind of deep. So what we did is we took advantage of a cold winter and put people on the ice and poked holes in 5 different locations, which you can see on the plan where they are. And we came up with a depth of 8 feet plus or minus, I'm sorry, 6.3 feet deep, but at 8-foot elevation. When they dug this out, they actually hit groundwater. That's the verbal description of this, so that's why they stopped. And they also put in a liner. So this is a pond liner at the bottom of this pond construction. So I hope that satisfied where we were going with this, and it's kind of interesting to hear that history. Dates back to 2000 to 2005, sometime in that period. We just couldn't put a exact date on that. We were also asked for the wall construction to get technical about it and use name or call out the types of blocks that were to be used. So there's 2 different kinds of blocks up there. We don't choose them that way, but it's a nice construction technique on either one. The one on the right, Keystone, uses pins that they insert, and that makes each course step back approximately 3/4 of an inch to an inch. The other system on the other side, I think this comes from Site 1, but that's not who the manufacturer is. They're the rep. And that has the edge system, where there's a beveled edge at the top, and the next, of course, gets inserted there that way. So anyhow, it's not a tall wall. We're trying not to exceed 30 inches in height for building purposes. We don't want to put up a rail. And right now, it doesn't call for that. It only calls for 24 inches and maybe 30 inches at the highest. Then the wall, as it goes along, it's about 136 lineal feet. It'll start to come out of the ground, or the grade will come out of the ground and wrap to the ends of both ends of the wall, I should say. There's also a cap block on here. The cap block will be adhered to with silicone. No railings are needed. We use crushed stone in the typical profile. The nice thing about these setback walls or segmental block walls really is that they don't allow pressure to build up. So you backfill these with crushed stone and allow the weight and the drainage to go through the wall. Let's see, soil preparation. Yes, the agreement I talked to is last on my list here, non-interference agreement. It's 3 pages long. You can imagine, since our last meeting, they sort of went through it, the 2 groups, Vineyard Reach as well as New Seabury Properties, and they hammered out this agreement. It was signed today, and it's now in your office, and I'm sorry I didn't bring a signed copy of it, but it is here. I think this covers all the elements that I had. If there's any questions, let me know.
Okay, thank you. Questions from commissioners?
No, I think Wayne has answered everything that we requested at the last hearing, and I think he's got a good plan here. So,
Thank you.
Anything else?
I think you asked the question, Paul, about, did you find out what species was in the pond, if there were any living creatures in the pond?
Oh, yeah. That was part of the history, too. I read the list that I put on the narrative to you people. Now, they didn't come up with anything different. So, sorry, I don't have the original narrative. I think I named about 3 or 4 bird species and some amphibians. The thing I asked about, did anybody go down to fish in there? And they said it was stocked with fish at the time, but nobody actually fished. It's kind of an embarrassing place to go fishing anyhow. But it has trout, they said. Trying to think if they said perch, I believe. I haven't seen them. I've been down at that pond a number of times. The only thing I hear and see is the bullfrogs. So, and then the birds land there all the time. They're sort of present at the sort of right time of the year. So,
There's gotta be turtles in there too.
Oh, yeah.
And there's turtles all over, Abby.
Yep. Other questions? No? Online, Sarah or Marjorie?
No, I'm good.
I've got a couple.
Okay.
Sarah always makes up for me, so,
It's all right.
Wayne, good evening. I did have a question. Thank you, Sandy, about the obligate species. And so the narrative with the speciation list is not something that I saw, but I do wonder how we're going to integrate that into the plan. And I think that that was one of the key elements that we were hoping to address with the continuance, and I didn't see it in the cover letter.
okay, I'm missing the question you asked. I'm sorry, I missed it. Something about the invasive.
Right. Let me rephrase. So the species that we know are dependent on this water body.
Phragmites?
What's that?
The Phragmites?
No. The Phragmites was another question. Yeah, we wanted to get those out of there, but the species of amphibians and turtles and fish and birds, how are we integrating that into the plan for the invasives management here? Is it going to be adjusted seasonally based on, their use of the pond? Are we going to be taking them out, moving them somewhere else? What are we going to be doing to protect those species in order for this project to go through? So that would be one question I have that remained from our last meeting.
That's a good question. I don't have a good answer for that. We were going to go down and assuming that the rumble of equipment and manpower needs to be in the pond as well. I can provide them with nets and so forth to move those. Any animals that you see, I think they're going to move themselves, to be honest with you. And we're plucking these trees out. There's no digging. So you chain these, and the excavator will lift it out. And of course, there will be a hole left over from the root systems and so forth. It'll muddy the waters, but no real provision. That's a good point. We could go in to the pond and put in a sedimentation fence and take out all the amphibians that are in there and move them to the other side as we go along, if you choose. Actually, I'm out of my, there's not many things in the landscape that I don't know, but that's certainly one of them. I'll leave it to your good judgment. What do you think to be done? But I've seen other scenarios, mostly coastal, and what they've done is the tides, of course, take care of most of the coastal situations. This doesn't have a tide, but they have put barriers up so that creatures can't get in anymore, but they have allowed that to be done. So we could put up a fence well in advance of the project. We could move as many of these as possible, and then at the time of the real work, it'll go quickly, by the way. So at the time of the real work, to have fellows with nets that move anything, because it will be cloudy in there. But we're at the very edge. We're not more than 2 or 3 feet in the water. So it's going to disturb just along the edges. The bullfrogs are who I'm thinking about. So, sorry. Got a little long-winded.
No, they're the fun ones, and I appreciate the acknowledgement that that's not your area of expertise. It's not mine either. What I have seen done is just to adjust the timing of the work. So certainly if we're thinking about amphibians and turtles, we want to aim for kind of the late summer or the fall so we're not interrupting their reading. I'm sure they'll move if they can.
Sure.
But it depends on the time of year. So what I might suggest, and defer to the rest of the commission here, is that we request an assessment from a wildlife specialist who could provide some recommendations on how to do this in a way that would lessen the impact on all the obligate species, if that would be amenable to you.
Timing is the key here. We had promised on the last meeting, we were trying to do this in early spring. For the plant part of this, makes sense. And I'm just worried that finding somebody who can respond quickly enough. I mean, if we could close a hearing tonight and say that depends on the report that comes in from the wildlife specialist, I'm sure he's going to have a methodology rather than, you know, put up a stop sign. So he's going to have a methodology. So I would appreciate, for the timing purposes of getting this done, that we go right out, we find a wildlife specialist. I know a couple. See if I can get them on the job and find this methodology that will work. So I think if we can close it, we have the number, we have provided a lot of the information that you've asked, and that'd be one clunker that we'll see if we can find out. But yeah, that's a good point, very good point.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this is a big one, and I do think if we are looking at bullfrogs and other obligate amphibians, spring is going to be disruptive to their breeding grounds. I don't know this water hazard in particular, but a lot of freshwater ponds are where these amphibians go to breed in the spring. So I do acknowledge the timing and wanting to get this done as quickly as possible. I also do know that we have a responsibility to make sure it gets done in order to protect the resource areas. So I would like to see a specialist come on board as quickly as possible to issue some methodology and recommendations, and then see how we can ensure that all the needs are met here. The only other question that I had actually would be to the agents and my fellow commissioners. So at the last hearing, we had discussed, we had requested, I believe, a waiver for Regulation 19, Chapter 172, Regulation 19, and I'm wondering if now that we know the history of this pond is like a line pond, if that's no longer relevant?
Yeah, I would say probably not, just because it is a lined, man-made pond. And, you know, in the interest of this, part of this project is trying to improve conditions with removal of invasive species and restoring native species along with the retaining wall, that, you know, I wouldn't recommend that it require a waiver, because I think they're trying to achieve a better environmental condition overall. And I just wanted to add in too, you know, when it comes to the treatment of invasives, I think there is a you know, timing that's ideal for applying herbicides to invasive species, which is typically in the early spring to be most effective. As far as like the removal of the willows, maybe that could be timed at a different time, because it's going to be having more impact to the water body and the species. So maybe that could be something that could be separated out as far as herbicide treatment and actual removal of willows as far as time of year, just to throw it out there.
Let me just say this. This is February 6th right now. If any of you have gone out and studied vernal pools, that's when the season really begins and gets interesting. It's usually 2 months from now. So it's usually April 8th, and it's within a week in the beginning of April, usually. So we can't do this in a phased project because of the equipment that's coming in. The big project here is to get the willows out, because that begins it and brings the equipment on to do two things. We're not using any herbicide on this. We're physically and mechanically removing the invasive species at the top. We're reaching out, we're taking everything, roots and all, and then we're replacing it right away with the soil that's being removed, so that when it gets planted, it all gets done. So this is an all or nothing type of a situation where you get that equipment in there and you do this. Now, being February 6th, If we close, the problem is getting a report from a wildlife specialist, and a methodology, more important than anything else, and getting the timing so that we do this in March. That would be my goal.
That was my misunderstanding about the herbicide treatment. I didn't realize that wasn't part of this application, but I think, if the commission were to approve this and they condition a siltation curtain, which I'm sure a wildlife expert would probably recommend in this instance, that may suffice as far as protection of the species in the pond. It doesn't function as a vernal pool because vernal pools have to have surrounding upland habitat during the off-season for amphibian migration.
Sure.
I'm not diminishing the value of it for other species, but as far as rare species, it's not NAP's rare species habitat, and it's certainly, just by virtue of its isolation surrounded by development of a golf course, the likelihood of it being used as a vernal pool is extremely remote. So, I think that putting in a siltation curtain would be very effective at protecting the species that use the pond, just my opinion.
Okay, we'd still go ahead, we'd still get consent or advice from a wetland specialist in writing and send it to you if you can make it contingent upon this. This we'd like to do. I only brought up vernal pools because it's a clock. That's all I brought it up. I did not want to say that this was any type of vernal pool, but that's when the biological clock of amphibians and all that starts. So that's the only reason I mentioned 2 months. So we're trying to get this done, over with, and close before that time, that precious time that comes in the spring. So.
I mean, if you look at New Seabury as a whole, and I hike around New Seabury all the time, there's a lot of marsh in there, there's a lot of bog, there's tons of amphibian, habitat through that whole area. And if this is really a pond that is only about 10 years old, chances are, yes, whatever's in there, the poor creatures are probably going to get their worlds rocked. But my kind of gut reaction is, once this is settled, they'll just all find their way back there the way they found their way there 10 years ago. And Sarah, there's a lot of wetland within New Seabury that has a lot of really good bullfrog habitat and amphibian habitat.
No, understood. I just want to acknowledge there's an awful lot of speculation going on. None of us are wildlife specialists.
No.
So I'm going to actually pass it over to Paul. I think, Paul, this originally was your concern, but I would like to see some expert guidance and peer review on this aspect, because it is habitat, and that does fall within our purview. None of us at this table are wildlife experts, so.
Right. I believe a letter from a wetland specialist outlining a acceptable methodology should suffice.
Okay.
I'd be satisfied with that. My concern in the original documentation, Wayne, and I know Drew just mentioned waiver, it does say in the summary that you're seeking a waiver to work in the 50-foot buffer. It should be 75, but and a continued maintenance plan for any invasive species, individual treatment, cut and drip of the certain species once in the spring and again in the late summer should contain these species. Are you asking for a waiver to just do this herbicide treatment as you guys see fit, or?
No, actually, it was said correctly. I did not ask for the waiver, and then we started discussing, the man-made aspect of this. But the idea of continuing monitoring
Right.
is a good idea.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to make that a contingency of an acceptance, that would be acceptable. Usually, the towns that I visit, it's a 3-year program.
Right.
And the timing that you mentioned in the spring and in the fall is correct. That's good. You see what's coming up in the spring, and then during the summer, sometimes we even remove these. Then it might become a cut and drip. But that's all the invasive species here is at the top of that slope. Most of them are at the top of the slope. So if you write that in 2 times a year, 3 years, something like that, if that's the usual Mashpee monitoring period. I've done monitoring for you people before, so that's what I remember. If you do that, add it into the orders and condition, I think that's acceptable.
I feel as though if there is a need, that the commission should be notified, and to the extent of what that need is, how much herbicide will be used and when, so that we're consistently appraised as to the progress of the project. I didn't want to just have a waiver to let that occur on its own.
Okay, so you would like a written waiver, a request for a waiver, is that it, or?
I didn't want to see any kind of a waiver.
Okay, all
but
right.
My preference would be, if there's a need,
Right.
come back and see us.
Okay.
So that we're always aware of the ongoing status of the success of the project.
Sure, sure.
Can I just ask a quick clarifying question, Paul? So as this application currently stands, there is no proposal for an application of herbicides, it's just kind of a wait and see if it's necessary? Because I'm kind of confused as to whether or not herbicides are involved currently, or if that's a future consideration.
It
Right.
might be, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just looking at the summary for the NOI, and it says, "We
Yeah.
also seek a waiver to work in the buffer zone for continued maintenance plan for invasive species." I didn't understand what waiver was being requested.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessary to request a waiver, but I just wanted to get clarification on whether or not herbicides are part of this proposal or not.
Right.
Because if that's the case, we do want to have conditions about, DEP approved herbicides and applicator
Exactly.
qualifications,
Yep.
those sorts of things. So
Yep.
if we can get clarification on that, that would be helpful.
Okay, that'll be a future issue. It's not on the table for this immediate action, but in the three-year monitoring, it might become an issue. We don't want to tear the place asunder again. So what we do is do the cut and drip. So why don't I make a statement in addition to a report from this wildlife specialist to say what the monitoring period is, state that, and the possible results if we do start to get invasive species back. And then I would suggest that we see you again, that in the event of that, we're not going to just go ahead and put in, use herbicides, but we'll follow your stringent rules about when to do it, how to do it, and it would cause another meeting to come back. So that would be cause and effect. In other words, I go out, do a report, and say there's no invasive species. Year two, I said, I see some Rosa rugosa coming back, so we're going to do this. And then I come back and see you again, so we can make that contingent about seeing the board again in that case. We're trying not to use herbicides here, so that's the main key. So it's a mechanical approval because we've got the right equipment on board. So that's what we're trying to do. But I appreciate all this feedback.
Yeah, I
It's
wanted to
pretty good.
clarify that.
And siltation curtain is the correct word, Sarah. That's what we've used before, is a siltation curtain. And that was, when you use it on coastal areas, it's also to help the shellfish, which have no say anywhere in this. So it's to make sure that you limit the action of this. And it's the same thing with this pond, and it's actually a heck of a lot less work we're doing. But plucking it out will create sedimentation, you're right. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Questions from the public? Not a lot of public in the room right now? Okay.
Late.
I would accept the motion.
Make a motion for 231 Vineyard Reach Condo Association for closing issue. Following conditions, number one, a signed 3-year contract between the owner and a qualified horticulturist or wetland consultant for monitoring and maintenance of all mitigation plantings. A letter from a wildlife specialist to review the pond habitats and methodology, including a siltation curtain. And I think those were the two key things that we were talking about, and no herbicides to be used. If herbicides to be used, we'll come back to the staff and commission. And then,
Okay.
yeah, no waiver.
Right. Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Sandy. Motion made and seconded, up for discussion amongst commissioners. Anything else, Sarah or Marjorie? We're okay?
Just to confirm, Steve, I'm so sorry if I missed it. We are getting the letter from the wetlands.
Yes.
Wetland specialist. Okay,
Yes.
That's a
perfect.
condition, yep.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Okay. Then I will take a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so the motion carries.
I
With the
just
conditions.
implore the board again, because of the timing, if we could get the orders of condition out, and it's on me to get that letter into you as well for consent, but I'm pretty sure that's when it's going to happen. So thanks, Sarah, because I'm not thinking freshwater. We want to get that siltation barrier in. I think that's a big plus. And as long as he agrees with this, that's what I'm attempting to get into you within, say, a week or two. Okay? I just appreciate the order of conditions being issued as soon as possible for obvious reasons. Timing. Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
You as well.
Nicely done, Sarah.
Same.
Yeah. So I know
It's frogs.
it's not easy, those frogs.
Now calling the next hearing, 119 Daniels Island Road and 15 Waterway, New Seabury Homes LLC. This is a proposed construction and maintenance of a new single-family dwelling, associated appurtenances, Title V IA Septic System, Landscaping and Mitigation. The representative is BSC Group. Owner of record is New Seabury Properties LLC. This is a notice of intent, file number 433326, and tonight's hearing is continued from January 9th. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Hannah Raditz, wetland scientist with BSC. I'll just go over a brief summary of the project, or as brief as I can be, because there's a lot on the table here. As the chair already mentioned, this is a proposed single-family dwelling on an existing naturally vegetated lot. This lot borders on Spinnaker Cove and contains salt marsh, coastal bank bordering vegetated wetlands, as well as land subject to coastal storm flowage within multiple elevations, 11 and 13. Currently, this lot is covered in upland forest with a BVW fringe, being one of the most landward areas of the resource areas, and some of the areas are somewhat exposed with grassy and shrub cover. There's some historic trails on this site, as well as a small area where there was historic clearing, where saplings will be proposed to mitigate for the stumps that were found in that area. Moving along to the proposed work. All impacts will be contained within the northwest corner. That's about 17% of the lot, or 16,845 square feet. This envelope will contain all impacts, including clearing, excavation, installation of utilities, and this will include the Title V septic system, stormwater control features, landscaping, which is proposed around all areas of the site, which will act as a buffer between the lawn and the existing forested areas. The lawn has been limited to only 5% of the total site, being 2,780 square feet or so. And this complies with the nitrogen limits that the town requires of this site. There's also some native grass areas along the path, which will serve as an additional buffer between the lawn and the forested area. This path, which I did not describe yet, is an existing roughly 4-foot wide path that is currently cleared. It's part of the historic trails on this site, and so for this, no clearing will be needed. They'll just keep that maintained by mowing it annually. For the permanent impacts that have to do with structure, the dwelling driveway, which will be paved, and access walkways will also be contained within the envelope. The house attached garage and decks will be roughly 3,654 square feet. And the driveway and walkways comprise of 1,871 square feet. All of this work, again, is in land subject to coastal storm flowage, as this area covers the entire site. There will be no work within the 0 to 75-foot buffer to any of the resource areas on the site. And the 150-foot buffer to coastal bank will be completely untouched. Impacts to the 150-foot buffer zone to BVW being between 75 and 150 feet are impacts associated with clearing and grading, portion of the dwelling, as well as the driveway and walk. Similarly, the outer portion of salt marsh, the 150-foot buffer to salt marsh, will include some clearing and grading work, as well as the driveway and walkway. Moving on, fill associated with this site has to do with bringing the septic system, which will be an innovative alternative system, which is key for nitrogen reducing, into compliance with the required design regulations. This fill has been limited to 250 cubic yards with a cut of 7.9, so a net of 242 cubic yards. This will be concentrated again around the septic system and leaching field, and some areas around the front of the dwelling, which include a culvert and near the driveway. These areas will be filled and graded in a way that limits this to the maximum extent practical and will allow for stormwater to be more naturally flow across the site and be contained within the limits of the site. In addition, helping with this design of the grading, dense landscaping is proposed, especially around these graded and filled areas, including a rain garden at the front of the site. This will include a large variety of small, medium, and large shrubs, as well as native grasses and forbs. Stormwater control will consist of 2 Coltec infiltration chambers, one underneath the paved driveway and one in the back on the eastern side, underneath lawn. These will be attached to roof drains and will capture the appropriate amount of stormwater predicted for this site. I already mentioned that. So for construction sequencing of this site, as it is a currently forested lot, the access will be gained from the road. You can sort of see in the plan a riprap sort of cover hatch mark near where the driveway is. That's where a riprap construction entrance will be established. Following that, sediment and erosion controls will be installed around the limits of clearing. After that, site clearing and site prep will be conducted with removal of all debris, followed by construction, and then followed by restoration. The sediment controls and erosion controls will remain in good order during all portions of the project, and a dewatering basin, which is noted on the plan, will be established in case it is needed. Wrapping this up, I just want to address the performance standards under the Mashpee regs, which we were requested to provide a request for waiver from. These performance standards have to do with work within land subject to coastal storm flowage. As we noted in our waiver request letter, under performance standard 2A, clearing of this site is listed as something, if it's over 500 square feet, mitigation has to be provided. However, because this site is currently completely vegetated, there's no way to provide one-to-one mitigation. However, language is included within this performance standard that it may be waived under 2C, which I'll get to later. Under performance standard 2B, the project complies. A buffer, naturally vegetated buffer, needs to be calculated for this site, and the width and depth of this have to do with the landward edge of the resource area that is touching mean high water. So for this site, that's coastal bank and salt marsh. This would generate a 34-foot buffer around these resource areas. We provide not only this 34-foot buffer, but also a roughly 100-foot buffer from this area as there's no work within roughly 100 feet of this 34-foot naturally vegetated buffer from coastal bank and salt marsh. Therefore, we comply with this standard as well. The final standard, being Performance Standard 2C, requires that 30% of a lot that is within land subject to coastal storm flowage be left vegetated. We are providing roughly 83% of the site as naturally vegetated, and therefore we believe that this allows us to be exempt from the requirements of the mitigation under 2A. As I stated before, this project has been designed to keep it as far from the resource areas as possible. This large contiguous forest will be kept in the same condition as it is now. As I mentioned, this trail is currently existing. No fences or structures will be placed up at the edges of this construction, so wildlife using this area and accessing the bay can easily move in and out of this area. This site represents one of the only areas along Spinnaker Cove that has a large forested area, and so the design of this project will allow for migratory and native species to continue to use this site without any major concerns or impediments. And with that, I will turn it over to the commissioners for their questions.
Thank you. Okay. We'll start with commissioners for questions, comments, concerns.
Yeah, first question I have is, can gravel be changed from asphalt to stone or shells?
Asphalt to stone or shells?
Impervious?
So joining me tonight is Brian Irrigation, who's our engineer for this. I might have him respond to that because we do have the Coltech system beneath it, and I'm not sure if changing the driveway material could complicate that. Brian?
Hi, good evening. Brian Irrigation, professional engineer with B&C for the record. Yeah, that's fine. It's more a question really for the owner if that's an acceptable solution. Where it would be problematic would be we have one catch basin that's in the middle of the driveway. And so, yes, that would be problematic to have shells getting into the system. So it is preferred that we pave it. You know, we've accounted for all of this pavement in our stormwater calculations, and we're providing, you know, systems that can handle above and beyond the 100-year storm. So in considering the very low impervious lot coverage, we feel that it's a reasonable request.
Okay. And then I was looking at the house plan that was provided, and I look at the northeast elevation perspective, and it shows two sets of stairs coming off the rear deck. But it looks like those set of stairs are going to land right on top of your Caltech chambers. So is the architectural plans incorrect, or is there an issue with your location of the Caltech?
Yep. So that's a good catch. That architectural plan is a generic plan at this stage. And so it's really an optional second set of stairs. So that's not really part of the proposal. That's just, unfortunately, that was all we had available to us to provide a rendering. So it just kind of made some assumptions on the options that, you know, the owner would like. However, I would say though that having a set of stairs over the Caltech, if that was there, wouldn't necessarily be problematic in and of itself. You can drive over these systems. You can engineer them to drive over them. So, but that's not the case here. We are not proposing the second set of stairs.
Okay, because on your plan you show a set of stairs in the front, but there's no set of stairs for the rear deck.
They're just not really labeled. If you look at it's really the southern corner of the house. And at the southern end, you'll see just a couple of lines there indicating stairs down.
I'm not seeing them.
Where? I'm not seeing that.
I'm not seeing it.
Because I think you mentioned last time that this has to go through ZBA approval?
Correct.
Right. So, for ZBA, you have to present a set of plans that you plan to build and get approvals on.
Yeah, we filed with the zoning board. They've accepted our application. We've also filed with the health department, and that plan has been approved but not yet issued. They're just waiting for hard copies. But we are aware of that requirement.
Okay, because you're showing plantings on the north and south side of the deck, and you have a Caltech system on the east side of the deck, but no set of stairs there. So.
Yeah. There's two different drawings that,
Yeah.
So the architectural is just a rendering that I took from the architect's website. It's not a specific set of plans for this specific application. It's the same house, but there are options. Like I said, one of the options are the decks and the stairs, and we're not going to be going with that. As I look at our plan, I see that there are no sets shown of stairs, but the stairs are going to be on the left side of that rear deck as you were facing the deck from the water. The stairs would be on the left side of that.
Okay, so those plants that are shown on the left side will be.
Yeah, I see that. We're gonna have to move those bushes are gonna have to get moved. Yeah.
yeah, right in there.
And then, so looking at the house plan, so where this is elevation 11 AE flood zone, so is the architecturals showing these breakaway walls or panels with flow through?
So this will be
Or
all.
flood vents are going in there?
This would be all flow through. The home is gonna be up on pilings.
Okay.
First, the elevation of the first floor will be 13.5.
Okay, so it's all flow
So
through.
this
Okay.
building is gonna be 100% FEMA compliant, flood zone compliant. That's the intent. These are not final architectural plans yet. As soon as all the local, approvals are secured and the risk is gone, the owner will contract for a formal set of architectural plans for the structure.
So is this footprint changing?
The footprint is not changing.
Okay. It
This
just,
is the footprint.
okay. It just, again, is if this is a set of plans that's submitted to us and a different set of plans submitted to ZBA, there should be the same set of plans.
This is identical to what was submitted to the zoning board.
Okay, so, but if this plan shows the deck with sets of stairs, the perspective doesn't match up with the floor plan, and your plan doesn't match up with these architectural plans. So,
Well, I'm
just looking for-
explaining it, trying to explain it to you, yes.
right, for accuracy here, if you're asking for an order of conditions, it should be an accurate set of plans of what actually gonna be built.
Hi Steve, how you doing? This is Nick Galaz from New Seabury Homes. With the stairs, like Brian said, they were just an option to run the stairs out that way. We probably won't, they'll probably run along the deck, so nothing even lands on that, the drainage system out back there as well. As you know before, we were trying to mitigate our costs a little bit more, as the original plan that we had for this cost us extensive, so we came up with these plans here. This is what will be submitted or has been submitted to the ZBA, and also the footprint will not be changing, so this is what we will be building. The only issue here would be the stairs, which is an easily changed.
Okay, so the site plan should be revised to show the set of stairs coming down,
Somewhere, yeah.
because that is.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, and then, if we can change the driveway even over to pervious pavers instead of stone or shells, that'd be fine too.
Yeah, completely open to that, yep.
Would it be possible to have some sort of stone edging to the driveway to contain gravel or shell?
If you want a solid system for that, drain area, pervious pavers work really well too.
Mhm.
Yeah, either way it works if you want it.
Yeah, I'm imagining sort of a
Shells with-
narrow.
With a cobble edge, and that's fine, or pervious pavers,
Yep.
either one.
We do have a wide cobble apron, and that's proposed at where Daniels Island Road will intersect the driveway at the edge there, so that will give it a nice edge.
Mhm.
And then, the pavers would be good because, like I said, we are trying to collect that stormwater by catch basin, so.
Okay, great, thank you.
So when can we have,
Go ahead,
the
Marjorie.
accurate the redone floor plan, architectural drawings, whatever? That was
This is your floor plan. Nothing's gonna change with this floor plan.
nothing's gonna change.
Besides
I
that.
don't have it, apologies, I don't have it here.
Okay.
At my office, so, but it sounds like, from what Steve is saying, that it's gonna have to be redone anyway, is that what you're saying?
No, just the site plan, Steve is saying, just showing the stairs in the site plan.
Just a second, okay. So, I would be interested in seeing the actual architectural drawings as they now exist.
Yeah, I believe they were submitted.
Okay, is that so, Drew? I don't know.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we did forward that out to all the commissioners.
Okay, so I'll just get another copy from Stacy. I'm just primarily interested in,
It came out late this afternoon, Marjorie. You might not have just seen it in your email.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Who's that?
That's Shauna.
Oh,
It
hi.
was late. It was late. Yeah, it was
Is
3-ish.
it coming up?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go take a peek at that. Because what I want to see is what finally came out of the total square footage for the dwelling. And I know I'm particularly interested in the square footage as it relates to the septic, and what I can see is from the Board of Health, that it can accommodate up to 9 bedrooms, which I believe is more than the last one that I saw at the last pass. Is that where we're at now, do you know? I'll try and go without the
The plan shows for five bedrooms.
Could accommodate, but I think they're only proposing either 5 or 6. Six, because it's got a 80,000 square foot lot, and you're allowed 1 bedroom for 10,000 square feet.
right?
Still under the allowable maximum of bedrooms, but they're not proposing 9 bedrooms, they're proposing 6.
That's it.
So how many square feet?
Yeah, this plan says 6. This one here, see it? No, this plan right here, Steve. Yeah, they got it right in there, see it? 6 bedroom.
Proposed for 6 bedrooms, the home
We
itself
shouldn't
is
have
5
started with
bedrooms.
that. That's a marketing.
It's just garbage.
And that makes how many square feet for the,
Are you looking for the footprint or the
Yeah.
living area, which would be the sum of the areas of both floors?
I'm looking for what the Board of Health would consider the total square footage of the dwelling.
To be honest, I don't know how we don't typically provide that number to the Board of Health, because they're counting bedrooms. But the total living space, there's 2,290 square feet on the second floor, which is the first floor above the garage.
Okay.
And there's 1,627 square feet on the floor above that, for a total of 3,917 square feet. The footprint of this structure that includes all the various roofs, the largest possible footprint is 3,600 and change, 3,700 square feet almost, is the total footprint.
Okay, so,
I'm trying to help you understand, the basic.
None of those
box
figures match
of
up
the
with
house
what's on this
is
plan.
55 by 34.
It's
That's the basic
3796.
box. There's a little bit of some additions on the front side of that, but that's the basic size of the house.
22.
Yeah.
so we've got a
Yeah.
floor,
That's
unfinished basement,
up in big
and
footprint.
6 bedrooms that you've applied for. So we've got the septic that goes with that.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay,
so-
yep, and we're using a microfast innovative system.
Okay.
It's a microfast 0.75, capable of removing 55% of the nitrogen. And as I said, with this type of system, we could actually get above the 9 bedrooms, we could actually get, it's either 13 or 14, because you're allowed to increase your loading rate with that nitrogen reduction. And so we're only proposing 6.
Okay. It's still gonna be a big house on that lot.
Well, it's 2 lots, it's 2.23
I
acres.
know.
So, and it's only 30, it's under 4,000 total area, so.
Well, I love the area and I love the positioning of the lot. Just good.
Yeah.
Why are you laughing at that, Nick?
That's me.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Well, you know that I love the lot, but you also.
I know you do.
Yeah, but I just have,
It hasn't quite reduced from what it was before.
well, I'm happy to hear that.
Oh.
I just, as you know, I have a issue, one of the reasons I am on this commission is I have an issue with the overuse of the lots and the actual real estate itself right out to an inch, before the drawings, you know, so. I love that area, I love that, but it's a big house.
Yeah, but that's why we're leaving almost, 85% of the lot.
Okay, we're going to move on to other questions that commissioners might have.
I have a couple.
Sure, go ahead, Sarah. Floor is yours.
Yeah, Hannah, Brian, Nick, good evening. Nice to see you all again.
Hey?
Just a couple of clarifying questions. It sounds like listening to the information that's being presented and taking a look through the packet, albeit very early this morning, so forgive me if I missed something. It looks like there are a couple things that I wanted to clarify. The first is that the lawn area that's mentioned in the narrative is about 2,700 square feet, but on the nitrogen calculation sheet, it's about double that.
It's even more. I can explain that, Sarah. The reason I did that is to be very conservative, because those areas, while it's not going to be lawn, it might receive fertilizer, or, it could if that was something that was, so it was just a way of doing it, because when you're doing the nitrogen calculations, it's either roof area, impervious area, or natural area, or lawn. And so, to me, the most appropriate category was to be conservative, call it lawn, which would drive up the nitrogen loading. So that was why I did it that way.
I see. Okay, and we can maybe revisit. I believe that fertilizer would be out of the question, period, correct?
And then
Area, so,
our nitrogen reduction would be even lower, which is
fantastic.
great. I mean, it's only 2.3 parts per million, as with my conservative analysis.
Okay. Okay, great. The other thing is that in the plan, and I think we've already addressed this, but I do just want to confirm, one of the plans lists that the driveway is paved and another says that it's a gravel driveway. So I understand that we're open, the owner is open to making this permeable. So that's fantastic. And then the third clarifying question I have, Brian, actually is for you. You just mentioned that the living space of this 5-6 bedroom house is about 3,900 square feet, but on the plan that I have in front of me, it says 3,200 square feet.
Yep, that's a really good catch, Sarah. And I had that as a note to actually mention it. That was a carryover from a former plan, and that's not correct. The footprint that's listed there, 3796, is correct.
That's the one, okay.
Yep, but the actual living area is 3917, as I stated to Marjorie earlier. Great catch.
Okay, well, thank you.
You were paying close attention.
I'm paying attention.
Girl, yay!
Oh, boy, we're having a good night. Just a couple of questions, too, because some of these things I'm not familiar with. So what is the Caltech system that I see 2 installations of, one in the front and one in the back? What is that?
Haltex are just a high-density polyethylene or plastic chamber, a stormwater chamber. They're shaped like an arch, and they have they're laid on top of a bed of stone, crushed stone, and then they're backfilled with stone. And so we send stormwater there through pipes, and it just naturally recharges back into the ground.
Okay, great. So this would be an alternative to a dry well or?
You could think of it as a large system of dry wells, kind of. And so we have a system in the front, and then we have a system in the back. So all the water all that runs off the roof will all be collected and recharged in the ground as well.
Wonderful. And then the secure, what is it? The secure sewer service to the wooden pier? What's that all about?
Yep, so the actual sewer pipe, because the building is elevated, so that's gonna have to be, the sewer's gonna have to be run down and strapped to the side of one of the piers that supports the house.
I see, okay. So that would not be referencing the pier that's part of another plan, this is just the structure?
Correct.
Got it, okay, so we're not running, okay, perfect. And then what's the elevation of the utilities here that are on the side of the house, the distribution box?
Sure. So, and I apologize because we did prepare the septic plan a little bit after, so there were a couple of changes, but the elevation of the 4-inch pipe into the distribution box is 6.92.
So 6.92.
And so that's why I have built the grade up around the septic tank and the distribution box there. You'll see a contour 9, elevation 9 contour. That's so that we have proper cover over the box and over the septic tank. And to be honest, that's where we are proposing 242 cubic yards of fill. The vast majority of it is there to accommodate the septic tank in the field, in the distribution box. And as Hannah pointed out at the outset, there is a little bit of fill in the front yard for the driveway, but for the most part, I mean, it's going to be left as is. Everything underneath the home, the exception of the obvious, drilling of the pilings, is all going to be accurate.
He just said 6.92. That's not what the plan says.
Really like the rain garden, like you
Plan
talked about, a lot of work to condense this.
On the D box, it says 8.06.
The last time we spoke.
He said it was 6.92.
Kind of the plan, so anything.
This plan.
The impact would be great. One other question.
Grade
on the
above it.
plan.
Okay.
If I could, I see that there's a planting plan to replant 6 trees a little closer to the water. And you might hear my little ones are coming up to bed, so if you don't mind, they're probably going to be very curious about what we're doing in just a few minutes, so full disclosure. But I see the 6 trees that we're planting, and I saw in the narrative we're replacing 3 trees, but when I look at the plan as it is, I see a lot more X's to indicate to me that trees are going to be removed. So do we have a total count of the trees that are being cleared for the project as proposed?
Yeah, Sarah, I think it's a misunderstanding because we don't use X's to note trees that are going to be removed. So what looks like X's are our pine tree symbols that you see all over the backyard and in the buffer zones, and those are all going to remain. Those aren't being touched. I wish we had the plan to confirm that that's what you're looking at. But I think what you're looking at are X's that have like a 12-inch PP next to it, or which is pitch pine.
Yeah, it's like an asterisk, and I see.
Yeah, those are the trees. Those are coniferous trees. That's the symbol for a coniferous tree.
Perfect. That was my understanding, but I do see several of them that are overlaid underneath or on top of the proposed structure. So those trees are coming out. Building the house out.
For the underneath the house, yes, those will absolutely have to come out.
Okay. Unless it's a tree house, which would be kind of cool. Okay, and so what is the total count for the trees being cleared?
I don't think we have that total count for the trees being cleared, but that's something we could very easily provide. And also to your comment on the stumps, that was something that was found, I believe it was by Dan when you went to the site. They were cut quite a years in the past and had nothing to do with this project. But as there was 3 noted, we are doubling the amount and just filling in that area with 6 saplings to add trees back to the coastal bank.
So those were previously cut, not related to this project?
Yep.
That's
Yep,
just
they're quite old and
helpful.
mummified.
Some kids cut them down. We're drinking beers out back.
Oh, boy. Well, that's great. That's good habitat. I think those are all the questions I have for the applicants. I did just want to respond to the waiver request, maybe as part of the deliberations for the commissioners. I'm going to do it now before my little ones come up. But I recall, after the numerous continuances we had for this project, the reason that it was denied as presented had to do with the compensatory plantings. And so when I look at Regulation 25, Performance Standard 2A, I see that in our local bylaw, anything exceeding 500 square feet of disturbance is notable and contributes to this unacceptable, significant, and cumulative effect upon the protection of wildlife, as noted in the regs. And this proposal, I do just want to be very clear. I do understand the great concessions being made and the modifications that have been made, but we are talking about 34 times the amount of disturbance that has been noted as significant. And so I do not think that the compensatory plantings are kind of to be reasoned away by talking about the relative area within the parcel. I do think it's significant. I think that, the regulations say that it may be waived, but in this case, I don't know that I feel that it's appropriate or responsible, given the scope for the project. So I can appreciate that the language here is not entirely clear, but I do not agree that the project would be exempt from some compensatory planting. And I know previously when we had seen this application, there was talk about off-site mitigation to be tied to this project. So I just wanted to get that out on the table, and that's just one opinion. But with that, I will yield and pass it back to Paul.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Sandy, did you have anything?
Good.
All set. I want to ask a question about the slab itself. It's 3,796 square feet. I assuming that's a concrete poured slab?
No, that's not correct.
No?
That's the footprint of all the roofs combined. So if you were up in the sky, that would be the maximum footprint that you would see. There is no slab that's going to be poured. The existing ground is going to remain underneath the structure, and it's going to be elevated on piers.
Okay.
As Sarah pointed out, we are going to have to remove some trees that exist
Right.
underneath it. But no, we're not going to pour a slab.
Okay, great.
I don't know if that's correct, because the architectural plans show a garage is underneath storage areas, an elevator, set of stairs, owner storage.
I saw that, yeah. I just
So
assumed it was
How can you leave
cement.
that in a natural state if that structure's going there?
There won't be any storage other than cars. They can't have stored, they can't be allowed to store things underneath there. Can't have lawnmowers and such, things that could be, get picked up with the tide, if you will.
So you're saying this architectural plan is incorrect then?
For the lower level, it's all gonna be either just gravel or whatnot, but no permanent structure.
Okay. So,
Well, my concern is, when I saw the architectural plan for the garage and several storage areas it refers to, right?
yeah.
I just assumed that it was a cement slab, and I was going to ask for drainage components in that slab. But if it's just going to be natural landscape, then that's no concern for me. Okay. Nothing else? We're good. I'll go to the agents. I don't know if Drew or Dan.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on the waiver aspect of this. That the 500 square foot, threshold of operation under C, C2A, I believe it is, that it's not really worded as that that's going to, anything above and beyond that is going to be creating an adverse impact. It is a threshold, but it's countered by the offer, the consideration of how much land is being left unaltered, and if that exceeds 30%, it is at least suggested that that could be a criteria for a waiver. So, it really should some consideration from the overall lot size here, which is 80,000 square feet. So if you had a large home on a smaller lot, I would understand about compensatory planting and house size. But with a lot this size and the house, and the size of proposed alteration, it really does meet that waiver criteria, at least in my opinion. No other comments. Thank you.
Okay.
So Drew, on that though, is it impossible for the owner to subdivide these two lots then and sell a second lot?
That I don't know, that would be a question for the applicant.
Because what you're saying is correct as it stands now, but if a year from now, this owner got cheeky and said, fine, I'm gonna break my two parcels into one.
I don't believe that's possible because the way it's constructed, you can see where the parcel crosses, the dwelling is there.
Okay,
So that wouldn't be.
So it's not,
Yeah,
okay.
it's been designed from the beginning that these should be combined.
Okay, I just,
And on that as
Yep, there's so
well,
much going on, it's hard to see.
There's so many 75-foot buffer zones, it might be vastly difficult to even do that.
okay.
That's all.
That's a really good point, though, Shawna.
Yeah,
Thanks for bringing that up.
people come and go and change.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dan, anything else you want to add, or?
No, the waiver considerations definitely have to be discussed amongst the commissioners, because it seems that there is differences on that. When it comes to the architectural plans and things of that nature, discrepancies like that, if the project is gonna be approved, can be conditioned, and I would highly recommend that they are, because of the number of discrepancies, I don't wanna call it discrepancies, but differences.
Confusion.
Confusion, there we go,
Confusion.
perfect, yes. The number of confusion on it, just so you can have that set in state, for the future. But the waiver section is gonna be the one, I think, that needs to be discussed amongst the commission, mainly because I feel that there's a difference on whether they qualify or not. So I think that should be discussed. But other than that, the project, it is maintaining out of the 75-foot buffers, a couple of buffer zones it's out of completely for the 150. And it is, as we all know, completely in the flood zone. So there has been a lot of changes to the plan. There is a lot of stormwater management. And it sounds like from the discussions just tonight alone, the applicant is willing to work with you guys for that. So I think that's for consideration as well.
Great, thank you. Anything from the public? Don't think so, but I have to ask. We're all set there. Okay. All of that said, I would accept a motion.
Okay, make a motion for 119 Daniels Island Road, 15 Waterway, New Seabury Homes, for close and issue. The following conditions. Number one, they have to change the driveway to pervious pavers. Number two, have the site plans show the rear set of stairs to match up to the architectural plans. There was a note, the septic system says for 5 bedrooms, but the house, the plan says 6 bedrooms, so that should be corrected to 5 bedrooms. The architectural plans to show pervious surface underneath the house, and that plan to be revised to show just open space as described by the applicant.
Okay.
Next condition would be submission of 3-year contract between the owner and qualified horticulturist and wetland consultant for monitoring and maintenance of all mitigation plantings. And the next one is to waive regulation 25C2A, since the property will be, have 86% of lot remain in a vegetated state. I think I covered everything.
How about the living area figure on the plan of record? It says 3215, but the engineer said it was much higher than that.
think there's a difference. I think he described that as a living area versus total coverage. Because the living area is just
Right.
finished space, so there's a covered porch, there's decks, and there's roof overhangs.
Right.
So I think that's what the 3796 is. And the living area is just the finished space.
So then the change on the plan is to go from 6-bedroom to 5, you said?
Yeah, because the septic, if you look at the septic
Calculations,
plan,
right.
it's calculated for 5 bedrooms.
Okay.
So that should be 5 and 5.
Wasn't the application to BOH for 6?
Yes,
No.
I believe it
the
was.
BOH application was for 6.
Was
Okay,
for
but then the
6.
design
It is a
calculation.
6-bedroom.
Okay, but then the design
That's
calculations,
what was applied for.
okay. But the plan shows a 5-bedroom design calculation.
Yeah, they applied for a six bedroom for the septic, and for the actual house is to be 5, is I believe what they're
Okay,
saying.
but they should be 6 and 6.
It should be clarified.
Yeah,
Question, Board of Health, says, that's one of the things sort of threw me off, can accommodate up to 9 bedrooms. They're using the 37, I think. That's why I had asked the question earlier for Brian and Nick. If they're assessing 9 bedrooms, where is that coming from?
Size of the lot.
yes.
They're going by the size of the square footage of the
They're going by the
lot.
lot, they're not
Right.
going by the footprint.
No.
Correct. Board of Health is going by the lot size, and the applicant is not requesting the maximum for the lot size. They're requesting something else.
Okay,
So,
okay, good.
so if the Board of Health request is for 6 bedrooms, the plan on sheet,
Says 5.
sheet 1 says 6 bedrooms, but the design calculation says 5. So the design calculation should be changed to 6 bedrooms, and the nitrogen calcs reflect that, too, right?
I assume the nitrogen calcs for the tank are reflecting 5, if that sheet is saying 5. There's a
Yeah.
discrepancy in the plan of record, and we have to have the plan of record correct that we're referring to.
Right.
So,
Everything except the one instance you found where it says 5 is based on 6. The nitrogen loading is based on 6. The number of bedrooms, the septic system is sized based on 6. So we'll change everything to make it all 6. I don't know whether it was, like I said, there was some changes that got misconstrued when we prepared the septic plans, which are after we filed the notice. So we'll make sure it's all the same.
So that would describe, not to be a nag here, but will that address also the discrepancy? 97,000 square feet is what the Board of Health is saying. That means that it can accommodate up to 9 bedrooms. So we're not comparing apples and apples, seems to me, unless I'm being terribly dense here tonight.
I think you're not I think you're just kind of misunderstanding what we're talking about and what they're talking about with the 9 bedrooms. They're just kind of rewriting, they're trying to explain how many bedrooms would be permissible under Title V. However, the way that you assign the design flow for the house is based purely on the number of bedrooms. It's just 110 times the number of bedrooms.
So what is, so
They're only asking
Area of the
for,
house does not factor in area of the land, only factors
660.
in when you're in a zone 2, a nitrogen sensitive area, and there's a limitation on the number of bedrooms.
So that's what I thought that you were correcting me on before, that you were going to the size of the lot. Is that not so?
Yeah, I guess I'm unclear on the question, Marjorie. I'm trying to.
I'm trying to understand your previous explanation for how they came up with the 9 bedrooms. Because, you know, we all know what the Board of Health is looking for the numbers to get them to that place where.
Absolutely. The way they came up with that 9, and I think it was Drew who explained it, but Title V permits 1 bedroom for every 10,000 square feet of land that you have. So given that we have a total of 97,140 square feet,
Right.
with the conventional system, we could get 9 bedrooms.
That's what I thought you said. So I just want to make sure that when if you're going to redo the numbers so that everything jives, then we know how that we're all, how the they came to be so that they all make sense, right?
Okay, so,
Absolutely.
so the second condition in the motion that Steve had made was 5 bedrooms, because he was going by the incorrect plan, the septic plan. And that is going to be corrected to 6 bedrooms. So if this were to carry, it would be a 6-bedroom home. Not 9, not 5, 6.
Not 9,
That
Okay?
will match up with the
Make
Board
sure
of
that we all
Health.
agree
Five.
what's gonna be the
Right.
final number.
That's what the motion is. It's going to be changed from 5 to 6. Okay,
Okay.
I've got
Now I
that.
understand.
All right. And is, any other conditions?
Well, the, just the architectural plans have to match up with 6 bedrooms.
Right.
Because the plan shows 5 right now.
Right. And no storage in the...
Yeah, it's all
in the
open
ba-
underneath
right,
with pervious
right.
surface.
Okay. So, is there a second to that motion?
Second?
Thank you, Sandy. So now the motion is made and seconded and open for deliberations amongst commissioners only. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable waiving the compensatory mitigation plantings. I'd like to see some. It's a lot of disturbance
Yep.
in a vegetated lot. It's adjacent to a lot of resource areas, so I don't agree that waiving regulation 25 is appropriate.
Okay. Someone else want to chime in on 25?
Yeah,
Steve?
the plan shows a lot of plantings going in along,
Yep.
you know, that being placed around the property. And 86% of the lot is still left in the vegetated state. So you look at the plan,
Right.
you know, you look at the planting plan, it's pretty extensive, so you know, if you go on to sheet 2. Sheet 2, you see along the whole footpath, there's a large amount of plants. There's a large amount of plants on the north side. There's all types of shrubbery plants on the east, or on the decks. I know that would change with the stairs. And then on the south side, then you got a rain garden with a large area in the front. And then there's, on the south side, a lot of plantings. So it's like, you know, there's not a lot of lawn here except over the septic system area.
Right.
You know, and then in front. So there's a lot of plantings going on here. And then the rest, 86% of the lot is vegetated, so.
Plus the
This-
6 extra, the 6 saplings down there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
You have
just to
the-
replace what was cut
Yeah.
whenever in
Septic
the
plan up,
past.
Dan.
I'm just saying, that's the reason
You have the
I made
septic
the
plan
motion
up on
to
the
waive it,
screen.
because there's just a large amount of plants going on, and
Not the notice of intent
86%
one.
of the land is covered. so.
Yeah, I think the septic ones.
We're taking a large amount of plants out though too, Steve. We're taking a lot of vegetation out to put in a lot of structures and impervious surfaces and things that are gonna channelize water and bring a lot of fill in, so. Understood. I think the applicants have done an awesome job amending the plan. It's a lot of disturbance. I'd like to see some compensatory plantings included. And we had discussed that previously, so I do know it's an
Right.
option. And I think it came out right at like the 11th hour when we were deliberating the project. So I'd like to talk about it at the forefront and see if that's a possibility as well. Because we're also talking about cumulative impact here, so. And this is, you know, not an existing structure that needs to be brought up to flood zone compliance. This is a vacant vegetated lot that we're building a house on that we don't have residents for yet. So the compelling need is greatly diminished to waive the regulatory requirements in this case.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can't compare it to the previous application, because that was a much larger application.
Hold on, Marjorie.
And that was closer to the BVW. So this is a whole new project. You can't compare it to what was
Right.
previously.
Every case is
submitted.
different.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. Go ahead, Marjorie.
So, well, I was gonna ask Sarah, a question about the issue, but now I wanna know who the beautiful child is.
I missed that. Oh,
This is Mariana and her little sister Celia, and they're the ones that are gonna be tackling the water quality issues based on the decisions we make tonight.
I knew there was a connection. I just wanted to make sure, Sarah, that, the last two, comment lines address what you were concerned about. because it didn't sound as though it was, but are you good with the outcome? Are you good or with what has to be done tonight?
No, I'd like to see the plan revised and come back with, you know, an amendment to add some compensatory plantings in.
Okay, so that would be just a separate move. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't sure if we needed to do that now or if we could do that when it comes back to us.
Sure, it's just one vote, but that's what I'd like to see.
Okay.
So
We don't
we'll-
know the delta though, right? We don't know what the delta would be on I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with that word. The planting mitigations versus what's on this plan right now, right?
We don't know the amount, is
We
it?
don't know the delta between those two. Do we
Oh.
know the delta between those two things?
No, we don't. What is the total square footage of the plantings on sheet 2 of 5?
That's a number I don't think I have. So that's looking for the landscaping areas, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
I know Steve went through all, and I'm looking at them, I can see all the different plantings along the footpath and, you know, on either side of that deck and here, there, and everywhere, the rain garden and, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to cut to the chase for everybody. I know everyone's time is short. It's approximately the difference between it's about 5,000 square feet, plus or minus, which was the difference that Sarah had pointed out in the nitrogen, the lawn that was reported in the nitrogen counts versus the lawn that's in our narrative.
Okay, so 5,000 square feet, plus or minus.
Plus or minus, this is just to get you in the ballpark.
Yep.
does
Okay.
include 10 trees as well, so I don't have the count of trees that are removed, but they are proposing 10 trees and a variety of shrubs, as well as the 6 that are proposed within the previously cleared area.
Right, so we'll go with the 5,000 that we've been given as what's there. Okay, anything else? Sandy, you all set over there?
Yep.
You good? Okay. All
I
right,
think they've been very clever.
there's been a lot of changes here. You know, and I was concerned that the whole floor was cement, but it's not. That's good. So if and when it does flood, there'll be some drainage capabilities underneath the building, flow through. There are a lot of pluses from the last time we saw this thing. Okay, if there's no further deliberations, I'll call for a vote. We're good? Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
No.
Marjorie?
Oh, you make things very difficult, Sarah. Yeah, I'm a yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
5,000 square feet, dirt floor. There's a lot of pluses there compared to what we saw the last time. Yeah.
Paul, they need to talk up.
Sure. Thank you, Neil.
All right, Neil, take care.
Stay warm, and dry.
So as a follow-up question, Dan, that order of conditions will be held until all those conditions are met, correct?
So the order of conditions, technically, no, it will be issued within 21 days.
Right.
But they won't be able to pull a building permit, well, they'll be able to request a building permit, but nothing's gonna get approved. No pre-site construction, no Forms A and B, no nothing until they
Until
get
all
all the
those
revisions
conditions.
and all of those are met.
Okay.
And obviously, the permits are for 3 years, so they got 3 years.
Sure.
Just
That was
wish we
my-
would get, you know, the plans that were right, not just
Well,
some
yeah,
makeup
that's-
architectural thing that, oh, we think this is what it's gonna be, and then,
It was just a sample that was thrown
yeah,
at us.
I mean,
I think it's also a good learning thing as well, because it was a way to see that this commission, you're all looking at wanting architectural plans. So it's also a way to, if it's gonna be a regulation change or whatnot, a way to aim it so you don't have confusion like that going forward.
yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
so
that's
it was a learnable, teachable moment as well as
Yeah.
definitely
Plans-
stuff missing.
Because that wasted a good half an hour.
Right. Plans need to be the same that
Trying
as
to
they
suss
circulate
out what
through
they're
boards.
doing.
They have to be identical.
Yeah.
You can't have one board looking at one thing and another board looking at something else. I mean, it's,
That's right.
We'll
Okay.
make sure that we don't sign off on the building request until until we get those plans
Yeah.
in place. And
Perfect.
everybody gets a look at them. Yeah,
Yep.
no problem.
Perfect. Okay, we have two certificate of compliances. Let me read these into the record. 138, 142, and 144 Ninigret Avenue, Paul V. Griffin Jr., trustee, 51 Union Street Realty. That project was DEP file number 433297. The inspection is passed. And the second certificate is 24 Taffrail Way, Mark C. and Sally C. Goggin, trustees. DEP file number 432722, and that one has also passed. So those papers will come around to be signed shortly. Moving back to our pre- and post-agenda items, we have a set of minutes for November 14th, 2024. Eligible to vote on those would be Steve, Sandy, Alex, and Rich. And we don't have enough people here. Rich isn't here, nor is Alex, so those will be held. The other set of minutes is February 23rd, 2023. And eligible on those are Sandy, Marjorie, and me. So Marjorie's still here. Did you have a chance to look at those? I checked them out.
I did, they were fine, I didn't find anything
Yeah,
wrong with
no,
them.
they look good.
Yep.
Okay, so I'd accept a motion on those.
So moved.
Thank you, Marjorie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Further discussion? Hearing none. Marjorie?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so we can take that off our list. Those are in. Under discussion, water quality issues and initiatives, anybody have anything to bring forward? We're good on that? All right. Yes.
Is this one supposed to put on for another meeting, an item?
We have this on every agenda item moving forward, in case something comes up that the commission needs to be aware of,
Well,
or,
I didn't want to address it tonight, I missed a meeting where you discussed something very simple, the start time for our meetings, so.
oh, we're going to get to that. That's further down.
That can wait, yeah.
Yep. The next discussion item is Chapter 172, Regulation 25, Performance Standards, Draft 7. As you've seen with the agent's comments, the draft has been submitted to Legal Services for review, along with commissioner comments that came in at our last meeting, I think it was. So we'll be on hold, waiting to see how that passes the legal litmus test. I don't know, Drew, did they give you any time frame on that?
They don't usually give a time frame,
No.
Unfortunately, so we'll just have to wait and see, but I'll, continue to follow up with council to check in on the status and update the commission accordingly.
Okay, great.
And we'll do a draft 8 after that, right?
Yeah, if we have to, sure. Yeah. And then it might be followed by 9, who knows?
We'll call it a 10.
Yeah.
A nice dozen. So the process for this is, once we get comments back from legal, it
Yes.
goes out for public comment? Is that how, how do we get
Depending
these?
on what comes back from legal, if something comes back from legal that's a
Need to
legal
flesh out,
issue,
yeah.
the subcommittee would have to go back and go to work on that, take a look at it, make it right, and then bring it back for you guys to take a look at, and then we would go forward to public comment, public hearing. If it comes back with very few changes, and the commission is happy with everything that we have, we would schedule it for public hearing to see how the public chimes in, and we go from there. But it could be a while. I mean, it's a lengthy document, and it took us a long time to put it together, so I'm not expecting a 2-week turnaround. But we'll
It's
see.
already been a while.
Yeah, I know it. Conservation meeting schedules. As you know, we've been competing for this room, not so much competing, but the Finance Committee has a schedule that they have to keep in order to get the town meeting warrant all squared away and approve the different articles that are on there. And they've been meeting quite regularly before us. They moved their meeting times back earlier in the afternoon. Apparently, there was no Finance Committee meeting tonight, so we took advantage of that opportunity to move our executive session into that 6:30 slot, which we normally would have started. But we have changed our start times up to 7 o'clock, and that's going to be consistent up until, I believe it's March 20th. So if Finance decides to change another meeting and gives us an opportunity to move things around if we can, once we advertise our hearings and everything, we can't change those times. So I think we'll be pretty much locked into 7 o'clock until the 20th of March. And then we'll go back to our regular timeframe. And that will probably apply to the quarterly meeting as well, I think, but I'm not sure.
I don't want to speak to that yet, I'm just not 100%.
Yeah, I'm not sure of how often, frequently, the Finance Committee is using the room. We may have to change the quarterly meeting from 6:30 up to 7 as well, I
Yeah,
assume.
because that's,
It's the 28th?
27th.
27th, right. And speaking of that, I know it's not on here, but I'm going to mention it. If you have suggestions or comments or things that you want to put onto that agenda, please let me know, because I'm already starting to formulate things for that.
Okay. I do have one question on a discussion item, if we're all set on the time.
Yes.
Okay. So, this is more for Drew. Drew, when I've been going around, I've seen the Cape and Island sign, they say Conservation Commission on it. I know we discussed that in the past. Anything come of that? So?
Yeah, I'll follow up with Cape and Islands and make sure that they remove that. Because I know that was discussed before, and I did have a previous conversation with Matt Costa.
Yeah.
Regarding said they were going to remove that, and apparently they haven't, so I'll just
I noticed
deliver
that
it as a reminder.
Yeah, just seeing all the signs say Conservation
Yeah.
Commission, so it's,
Yeah, no, we'll get that addressed right away.
Drew, if you're gonna bring it up again, the one down on Capstan never came down, so it's still there.
Right, there's quite a few of them out there.
In Bright Cove, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Thank you,
everywhere.
understood, we'll get it addressed.
Yeah.
I think the one on Ulm is still up too.
Okay, in terms of updates, Dan, I'm going to turn that over to you or Drew, just to go through what you think we need to see or hear, the most important concepts that are here.
There's nothing really, unless the commission has any questions about any of those updates, I'll be happy to answer them, but, the one thing about the upper quadrant restoration, so originally my thought process on that was to have another public scoping meeting at one of our regularly scheduled meetings. But the Wacoya Bay Research Reserve, is handling the public scoping aspects of this, and they have a lot more resources and meeting space to handle that. So that was the only change to the upper quadrant restoration. Was the next phase is going out to the public, soliciting public feedback on the 25% design plans that we currently have in place, that you were given an update by Worsley Witten Group a few months ago, and having Webner handle the public scoping and invite the public in at a scheduled meeting date to be determined. Because they just have more resources and experience when it comes to public outreach, and I feel confident that they would probably do a better job of facilitating that process than we would as staff. Just given the workload that we have, it's better to defer that to Webner, because they're going to be singularly focused on that. So that's the only change, and I'll update the commission as to when that's going to happen and give you as much advance notice as possible.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions on updates? Dan?
Nope, the Tribal Co-Management Focus Group met, we had a great meeting, and we're just kind of waiting for the tribe to get back. They're under elections right now, so not till after elections will we hear any word from them on a meeting scheduling time. And then for the other restorations as well, we'll see where those land. They're still in review phase, especially the Mashpee River restoration project. That's multifaceted, so we'll see where it lands.
Dan, Sarah put out that grant proposal, which has the deadline of I think at the end of this month. Is that something
And
we
was
want
that
to?
the NEEF?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something we want
I
to make?
have been looking into that. One of the biggest stipulation in it has to be 500 acres. of pollinator habitat affected directly by the grant. So I've been trying to map out that in Mashpee for the 500 acres. So I am looking to see if we can formulate a project with that. It would be, if any project, it would be for increases to hummingbird pollination and the lobelia flower on like the Mashpee River, or for bat populations along the Mashpee River. And the bat population could encompass both the northern and southern half, because bats don't mind freshwater versus saltwater, where hummingbirds, and not the hummingbirds, the lobelia is only going to grow in freshwater, not brackish. So that'll be the northern parts. So I have to see for that. The 500 acres is the biggest kicker in that.
Okay.
So
I will leave you my phone number, because I'm retired, and if you think we can make a run at it and you just need extra hands to put pen to paper to fill out forms and things like that, I would be more than happy
I
to be your
definitely will. I want to get something going.
administrative slave to make it happen.
I want to get something going, especially with bats.
Is Sarah still online?
Yeah.
Are you hearing this?
I'm hearing it. I think it's great. One thing I will say is that we don't want to move forward on anything until we meet with the tribal officials.
Yes.
And see if it's something they want to collaborate on, because that would be the idea. This could be
Right.
kind of a pilot project that we could partner on. I do think that finding 500 acres, it's not going to be contiguous, but we could find 500 total acres. I think if we cobble together a lot of projects, and I'd be really eager to hear from the tribal officials about suggestions they might have. I know they just did a very big installation of pollinator habitat at their government center here in town. So that would be really great, and I'm also happy to help in whatever way I can, but the elections are this weekend, so hopefully we'll hear from somebody next week.
I just didn't want to, I don't know if, Sarah, that's like the tribe being a gay, like, it seems like we have a deadline coming up, right?
It's a great
something
question.
we
Yeah,
should-
but this, we'll
okay,
just,
okay.
yeah, I think we have until March 1st
Okay.
to submit the application.
Yes.
But it's February 5th right now.
Oh, no, I know, I live in a
Oh, you said you were
different
retired. There's no
Yeah,
problem. You're
plenty of
retired.
time.
You can work 24 hours.
I will say on the topic, when it comes to grants, this is not a federal grant, so that is a good thing. Right now with
We have papers
with
to
the
sign?
atmosphere in the country, federal money is an uncertainty. So we have been not targeting, but getting a list of grants that are not for situations like that.
Bats and hummingbirds might not be,
Yeah, exactly. So, but this is not a federal grant, so this would be a perfect opportunity, just for
Two
safety.
analyzed. We
So,
got,
but I'm working on it. I'm looking
Okay,
into it. I'm looking into it
Wayne
anyway. now.
Tavares, that could approve. Yeah.
Guys, are you good if I take off? We done votes? And-
Yeah, I think we're just about wrapping up, unless somebody's got anything that,
No, I make a motion
Is
to
that
adjourn.
all righty, good
okay.
to see you all.
Is there a second?
Yeah, sorry about
Good night,
that.
Marjorie. There is a motion, first and two. Stay on for a second, Marjorie, you get to vote on this.
but yes.
Okay, Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
What is the motion? We're voting?
We're adjourned.
Adjourn.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Marjorie?
Marjorie's gone.
Yeah, just bob your head up and down, yes.
We got her.
And I vote yes as well. So we're adjourned at 9:45. Thank you.